We're glad to be with you, and we're doing a live broadcast after our tent's over. How you feel, Caleb?
I don't want to say tired because then everybody say too young to be tired.
Well, it was an enjoyable time. I'm tired, and it's been a long 2 weeks, not because of the tent, but just because of events associated with what we're going to be talking about tonight. And it's the reason we say that it was long is because we've been dealing with a lot of turmoil, and we just didn't have the inclination to take care of the turmoil in the way that many people wanted us to. And so, you know, Caleb, even after 20 years of this, I hate to disappoint people. And that's just, you know, that's what it ended up being, is people are disappointed. And they've been disappointed, I'd say, from many of them from the get-go of our broadcast. We don't do it to suit people. We are trying our very best not to rub people the wrong way, but at the end of it, we're trying to suit God. Yeah. And so tonight we are going to take care of an event that we talked about earlier, that we were going to take care of. And so we're going to go ahead and get right to that tonight. Let me get my particular particular PowerPoint up, and let's go back to the beginning of it. Let's start right here. As many of you know, we've been discussing for the last, 7 or 8 days intensely. Yeah. 29th is when the tent meeting ended. I think on the 22nd is when it really heated up that a mistake had been made. And what we decided to do is we decided to handle the mistake in a fashion that should demonstrate that we intend for individuals to recognize that we know that a mistake was made. And some individuals think because we didn't handle it in a fashion that suited them, then somehow or other we weren't quite doing it correctly. Well, I want you to notice, Caleb, you pull out of the way just a little bit. This is actually a website that has 6 subscribers, and an individual has put this particular video about Caleb Robertson edits Ron Ralph's sermon and gets caught. Johnny Robertson won't take it down. That has been played I don't know how many times, and here's why we did it. We actually let it play on our Facebook. We shared it on our Facebook. We basically alluded to it on our Facebook that so everyone would see it, and here's why. It now has 1,041 views. And you might say, well, what's up with that? 1,041 views. This gentleman that put the video up there, he said that we made a mistake on his pastor, and this is the show where it happened. Caleb was on a couple of weeks ago, and notice our views. Let's see, the views are right behind me, and let me go ahead and get to the large screen so that you can see it. 837 views. Caleb, you got 837 views. When you made the mistake, it's been about 2 weeks ago, and the views have gone up to 837 views. Now, what we did is we determined that we would let this gentleman have more views when we corrected it than when Caleb did it. And that took some time. It took some doing. It took us sharing the individual's video about Caleb, and we're basically saying, look, folks, if you're not making some mistakes, sometimes you're not alive. And it was one of those situations where we just had a lot of information that we were associating out of the video that we were using. We've been using some of these clips for several months before the mistake was actually made in September. Yeah. So in between that time, a lot of people don't want to hear anything that you basically say, but during that time that Caleb's wearing the dunce hat, we actually had a computer crash and didn't know exactly where the information was. So we were using clips that we had already used. And then when we finally got around to getting the computer back up, I was out of town traveling across to LA to try to help move some individuals into the Martinsville area. Had just been down to San Antonio trying to help another individual move into the Martinsville area. Went into a charitable situation during the hurricane in Houston. And all of those things combined together put a lot of space, a lot of information going on in my head that was not associated with Martinsville nor the TV program. And so I'll let you know, Caleb wanted to get it off the air immediately. And my response was, no, this is something that we need to take care of in a timely fashion. We don't want to make it look like you're trying to hide or you're trying to sweep it under the rug, because that kind of stuff just comes back. And so we're saying it open and out in the front, in front of as many viewers as we can get for Ron Ralph, that in fact it was an instance where we actually had been alerted to the W-2 situation. Caleb was involved in doing some other edit work and building on his slides. I mean, we're up here now, it's 9 o'clock.
Yeah.
One of the first shows that we did was July the 13th. We drove 3.5 hours one way to do that show, and that's where my computer crashed in Rocky Mount, North Carolina. So we drove 3.5 hours that night back home. What did we get home? About 2 or 3 in the morning?
Something like
so,
that.
you know, this is a very intense time for us. As I said, a month of back and forth across the United States, a colonoscopy right before I got back to the tent. And I think my colonoscopy was on the 15th or the 16th, something like that. And you know, I'm actually leaving the tent, and this coming week I'll end up having a mesh implant removed, surgically removed. It'll be my 4th operation on that same hernia. So, I mean, this is the life we live. And if you've seen any of our tents, you know these big old trailers that we're moving around and using sledgehammers all these years and putting these tents up. I don't have a crank pole on my tent. We actually have wrestled those things up for the last 20 years. And so that's how long we've been doing tents here. And even before that, we were doing them in Texas. So, you know, it's a difficult time. And you know, if you want to go ahead and pile on, it's okay. We deserve it. We'll live through it. And we'll be bigger people after it's all said and done. And so we do. Those of you who've been patient and who've had a confidence in us, we do appreciate it.
One thing with it, just, you know, you already said the computer crash, you're driving 3 hours there. And it's just one of those things, like, you know, we had already used it, and that's the thing too, a lot of what I was using was things we had clipped, sent back and forth, and so when you lose a video and you've got these clips and you just know you're hearing these things here and there was context to the back of it. And I would say, you know, some of the information we're going to have tonight, it's difficult to have so many personalities that you're keeping up with. And some people would say that's a cop-out, but I'm saying it's real.
They contradict themselves
Yeah.
on so many levels too, that it's very difficult. And I don't think a lot of people know we're playing several different videos from Ron Ralph.
Right.
He tells a story one time where he stereotypes individuals in the black community, and then he tells the story again.
Yeah.
And he goes even further. And so a person might say, well, y'all cut and clip that. No, look at his suit. Look at the settings.
Yeah.
It's a different setting. And so we've tried to cover all those things on Facebook, and we're going to leave that video up where you talked about Ron Ralph 2 weeks ago. We're going to let this one actually be named in such a way that you'll know that this is a response to it. And so tonight we're just ready to move right on into what it is that we are doing in the first place. What are we doing? This isn't about Ron Ralph. This is not about us. What it really is how this is affecting the community. And folks, once saved, always saved, the doctrines that these guys teach, it's a horrendous rip in our society and a difficulty when people are trying to teach the truth. And so I'm going to set it up, Caleb. You put together whatever you want to say.
Well, one thing that I just think about, you know, we were coming up here to the station, we were actually listening to some Ron Ralph, and I think that what you're going to play here, I'm saying, okay, you're talking about having a colonoscopy before coming into the tent. Mine was back in June, and I'm saying I don't think that my problem is food related. I think it's definitely stress related, because once this happened, and we found out, and this is the thing too, we're dealing with a video they deleted.
Right.
And so when I found out they deleted the video, and I had it that way, I'm saying when I found it, where he said the thing about the W-2, it just solidified in my mind, this is why they deleted it. And I'm saying the moment, like the day or the day after I found out that was a mistake, my stomach acted up. I'm saying continuously throughout the tent. But what I'm saying now is we're getting in front. I'm saying get it out of the way. The mistake was made, and I think we're going to see how do individuals let us go by, because Ron Ralph in a sermon we were listening to a minute ago was actually saying a man wanted to join my church. He said, no way you let me join my church. And he said, well, why do you think that? And he says, I used to rob banks. He said, no problem. You can join our church if you got saved. And it's like, okay, we can, and I'm not trying to diminish here,
Yeah.
but if we're saying we can rob banks, and you know they have this set in place to where people get to do this, I'm just asking, am I going to get any room? Because I was the one who did the TV show.
Yeah.
And I think when you watch these individuals, now this isn't Ron Ralph, but you're going to see how flimsy these ideas are. Now I'm all for, and I'm saying we're always talking to people and their pastors to acknowledge things, get ahead of it. This, I'm saying, again, not trying to diminish, certainly don't want to use us as the example. This is how you do that. You just own it. We're moving ahead, but I'm saying when you get with these, Gary Hughes, Lee Hilton, they're members of the local Baptist church, And the things that they say, I just don't know how I'm saying when these type of things happen and it's going to be you in the situation, I don't know how you're going to get by with the inconsistencies.
Well, let's begin with the way it works in society. This is what we're doing. Y'all, we're trying to make society a better place, and unfortunately, the doctrines that these guys teach, it's opening the door because nobody really knows what is acceptable. I mean, you don't know when you're saved. Take a listen to what really started all of this once saved, always saved.
Can we ask you a question? You gonna go see a movie today? What are you gonna go see?
Shades of Grey.
Okay, you go to church anywhere?
Yeah, I
Where do you go to church?
do. Rich Acres Baptist.
Say that again?
Rich Acres Baptist.
And who's the pastor down there?
Preacher Gary.
Preacher Gary,
Hughes.
Gary Hughes. Now, what would he think about you coming to watch two people have sex?
I have no idea.
Okay, are you married?
No, I'm not.
Okay. Sex.
I have no idea.
Coming to watch two people have sex.
I have no idea.
Okay, are you married?
No, I'm not.
Okay. So you think you would approve or disapprove?
Probably not. Disapprove.
Okay. So even in your own self, you don't.
Okay. Now, that's a bit strange to me in several levels. You know, when you ask about, you go to Rich Acres, and this is Gary Hughes. We're just going to bring him up, and let's see which one do we want to use. Let's bring him up here.
Galatians chapter 5, verse 4.
This is Gary Hughes. He is the local pastor in Martinsville, Ridgeway, at Rich Acres Baptist Church. I have him on a video saying that his ministry is only 3 to 4 miles, and he refused to go down and be involved in an adult store that was set up right down from him. Well, we actually went down and put the cameras on those individuals and asked questions about what was going on, what they thought they were doing. He didn't want to do that because his ministry didn't reach out that far, but we're basically saying it does. His ministry reaches out to the level that 50 Shades of Grey can be played at the local theater, and the people that are members with him, at least one of them, he denied they were members, ended up saying that she wasn't sure, but she thought he would probably disapprove. Well, you know, I kind of wonder what it is that he would disapprove of, and, you know, how he would gather that, Caleb, because, I mean, how do you feel about what they're saying?
Well, what he's going to say, I think it's going to be a huge contradiction. And the fact that she claims those people as her church, how can we then begin to argue? If all Gary Hughes is going to say is just believe, and she says, yeah, I'm a member at Rich Acres, well, then who can dispute the fact that she's, in their mind, should be saved?
And well, number two, she certainly could be saved without even being a member of that church, could she not?
According to their doctrine.
Right. So I think all he really would be saying is that, okay, we're not going to claim her.
Yeah.
But she is saved. I mean, but he actually wanted to deny that she was saved. And so we're not going to get into that. We're just going to basically listen to how individuals defend once saved, always saved, or the trouble that they get in when they start defending this. Now, what we've done is we've set up a scenario where we try to put them in a situation where they find themselves stuck running into themselves. And folks, that's not easy. Caleb and I were here 4 hours with these guys. 4 hours, and we've got video on the front end and we've got video on the back end. In other words, keeping up with 4 hours of data in our own minds and knowing what we're doing at the end of it and the beginning.
The Bible study itself
was
is
4
hours long.
Yeah.
And, you know, going in a situation like this, and one thing that we comment on, I mean, you might catch it during the video, it's just the way that it goes. I'm saying you will sit through so much before we ever get to anything substantive. And we, you know, some people count that for maybe like rudeness, call us brash, what have you, but we just want to get right to it instead of wasting your time. Let's just go ahead and get right into it. But with him, it took 4 hours.
I'll tell you what, let's do. Let's go ahead and set up some more in the regard to how difficult this ends up being. Got the lady going to 50 Shades of Grey. Look at this. You got a local pastor who's involved with one of his band members, and notice what ends up being said about that.
I'm writing this letter to you to say what I should have said on October 30th, 2005. I was trying to protect my family and you, the congregation, from hurt by being vague. And this was wrong. I would like to publicly apologize to Carl, the deacons, and the church for lying on a number of occasions. I want to apologize for not coming out with the whole truth. I am ashamed of what I have done. I have basically lost everything I have because of this terrible choice I will have to pay the price for the rest of my life. Human, Satan put a target on him, and he says, if I can get Tim Whiteheart, I can take down this church. But see, Satan doesn't understand. He did hit Tim Whiteheart, and Tim did fall. And
Tim Whiteheart fell, and he did destroy that church. It's just barely struggling, and all the members are over there with the other guy. Now that's how this turned out. But one thing to note, Caleb, they did forgive this guy.
Tim Whiteheart.
Yeah, they all forgave him, and he did fall. But listen to what he says.
even though he lost that battle, I know he's not going to win the war with Tim. Tim is a strong man. He's going to get back up after the...
So notice this. This is what is being said on the other end of this. A friend of his who is a Baptist preacher or was a Baptist preacher. And when again, it's hard to keep these guys together because they contradict. 1 minute they're a Baptist preacher, next minute it's Blessed Hope, next minute it's Hope, and or Blessed Hope Baptist Church. Then it's Blessed Hope. Now it's just Hope. And I don't know if he's connected with the mega church over in Raleigh, but there's a hope movement that's going around. And, you know, people are using these kind of catchwords. Well, here's what he says about once saved, always saved.
Can you commit fornication and then be killed without having a chance to repent and still go to heaven? True or false?
Well, let me quote a scripture since your program is well.
All right, go ahead.
The Bible says, he that is born of God sinneth not.
Okay, so now you're saying y'all don't sin over at the Baptist church.
No, I did not say
Well,
that.
what'd you quote that scripture for?
Now, that's proof he's at the Baptist church. Yeah. You know, when we started this thing in 2005.
Because it didn't have anything to do with the question I asked you.
If it does.
Well, here's the question. Let's see if the community can figure it out. The question is, can you commit fornication and then be killed before you get a chance to repent and still go to heaven? Now, what did that scripture have to do with you answering true or false?
If I'm saved, why do I want to commit fornication?
I didn't ask you that, sir. I don't know why Baptists commit fornication, but I know they do.
Are you saying people in the Church of Christ?
Sir, are you trying to change the subject so you can get out of your dilemma? You have still got to answer the question. The community's waiting on you. They know you're in trouble. It's either true or
I've never known a Baptist who was really born of God to commit fornication. I've never known a Baptist who was really born of God to commit fornication. I've never known a Baptist who was really born of God to commit fornication.
I'm thankful that you said it that way. Now, friends, all of you in Reedsville, there has never been a true Baptist who committed fornication.
A true Baptist who was born again who committed fornication. I've never known a true Baptist who was born again that committed fornication.
And this, what I said earlier about the contradictions, how you're gonna lose yourself in the middle of this, because I've talked with different Baptists here and there, and that's something we were saying on the road up here. They're different. You can't just put them all together. Some will have this idea about, well, God will keep you from sinning to a degree where you would fall away. And then others will say, well, God will just keep you from sinning. So evidently, if he's going to say, I've never seen a true born-again Baptist who will not fornicate, well, then what? And that's something that you look in the Bible, the New Testament, like 1 Corinthians 6. They had forms of religion, idolatry back then. I mean, who could even fathom today? You tell everybody, well, I'm going over to the temple, and what's going to be taking place there? Well, they're going to have temple harlots there. And it's like, he said too in the video, if I was saved, why would I want to fornicate? I mean, you think about David. And we're going to get into some videos where these individuals are going to say that the apostles weren't saved from this point to that point. And you know they're believers, but at the same time, he's canceling out people like King David in the Old Testament.
And Paul evidently knew a brother who committed fornication. He said this, but now I've written unto you not to keep company if any man that is called a brother be a fornicator. It's a possibility to have a brother who is a fornicator. And in chapter 5, verse 1, they have one. But yet, individuals in these particular Baptist churches, and you know, too, Caleb, they will even say, I don't know if that's what you were saying, they will say, if you are born again, you wouldn't. So that's what you were saying about David and all of that.
Absolutely.
So it is difficult. Now, let's move to Gary Hughes. This is what we ended up doing with Gary Hughes.
Galatians chapter 5, verse 4, fall from grace.
That doesn't even talk about that.
Let me read you something he read a while ago. Probably you didn't pay attention to it.
I was paying attention.
I don't know. Now listen to it. Listen real carefully. He that believeth on the Son of God hath the witness in himself. He that believeth not God, listen to this,
I'm listening.
hath made him a liar. Why does he make him a liar? Because he believeth not the record God gave him son. And what is this record? And this is the record, that God hath given to us eternal life, and this life is the Son. God says, if you don't believe that I give you eternal life, you're making me out a liar, because that's the only kind he gives.
Okay.
It's eternal. There's no end to it.
Okay, let me just ask you this then. Were the apostles saved? When Jesus died and raised from the dead, were they saved? Were they saved? Do you think our friends over at Ron Ralph's church know about this video?
Not about this. Well, I don't.
I don't think
I
that
just
when they
can't-
were discussing
yeah.
that, I don't know what Micah was discussing necessarily, but the question comes up in another setting, and we're going to have these independent Baptists disagree with the independent Baptists over in Carthage, Tennessee, and that's why we're wanting to get down to it. It's not that we're picking on any of these folk. I mean, is the confusion going to continue to reign?
Well, that's the thing too. Like I said even during the show about the W-2 that we're started clearing up tonight. I said in that show it was 2 hours long, and I said at the end of the day, all these people down in Carthage, Tennessee, they got souls.
Yeah.
So it's not like we just want to make a big parade over error and things of that nature. At the end of the day, we realize we've watched videos where Ron Ralph will actually say he has family members that are members of the Lord's church. They're not Baptists. So we look at individuals, we say they have souls. We look at Gary Hughes. I mean, you have had years worth of discussion with Gary Hughes, and
he's changed.
Yeah.
I mean, in the newspaper, he disavowed his own newspaper article right in this study.
yeah, and even like Brian Edwards, he said to you, you've asked him to come back on, and I don't know what his holdup is when he says to you, he says, Johnny, you would be shocked at how much I have changed since our debate. Well, that should be a good thing. I don't know why he wouldn't want to shock us with that. I'm saying let's have those discussions, and that's really what this goal was here with Gary Hughes. Did we know that it was basically going to produce material?
Not like this.
Not like this. We've actually got to use this for argument's sake quite a bit to actually show the inconsistency and the unsurety of once saved, always saved, because it never matches up. Never does it match up.
I think you're going to be appalled at the admission that he makes when I ask them, okay, so if once saved, always saved is true, I'm going to assume that you would have the apostles be saved. Jesus' own specially chosen individuals who confess him to be the Son of God, who see visions on Matthew chapter 17, and God actually speaks, this is my beloved Son.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously, Peter, you don't believe that? You were on the mountain, and in Matthew 16, he confessed it.
And John 4, they're doing all the immersing for Jesus along the way.
Right.
And you've got people coming to Christ, being baptized more than even John was baptizing, and yet these people themselves are not born again.
Not born again. I mean, think about that. He's actually saying, let's just say Luke chapter 7, verse 29. These individuals in Luke 7 are actually said by Jesus that they are John. Is it Jesus or John in Luke 7:29? They are, I think it's John. All the people that heard him and the publicans justified God, being baptized with the baptism of John. But the Pharisees and the lawyers rejected the counsel of God against themselves, being not baptized of him. So here you've got the apostles, and you wouldn't say that they had rejected the baptism. They wouldn't have rejected the counsel of God against themselves. So what were they doing with John's baptism? I mean, they were believing on him that was to come. They were preparing themselves for the Messiah. And so then we ask the question.
I was going to add, at the beginning of the book of John, you've got Peter coming down, and he says, we have found the Christ. And then, but I'm saying big time, Matthew 16, who do men say that I am? That's Matthew 16:13. Who do men say that I am? The Son of Man am. And he says flat out, and really, y'all, this is as close to Romans 10 as you're going to get before the cross. And it's Peter, and yet Baptist preachers who've been preaching for years will come back and say, well, he really wasn't saved.
But he confessed that Jesus is the Christ. And then, just one chapter later in Matthew 17, he's on the Mount of Transfiguration. And he has to be corrected by God. And so, why in the world would we not assume that these individuals are in fact saved people? Well, we've got two different instances. In Carthage, Tennessee, instances saying that they're not saved, and then this guy is actually saying different than them, but both of them say that they're not saved.
Right.
And that's an amazing admission. Take a listen. Were the apostles saved? When Jesus died and raised from the dead, were they saved? Were they in a safe position? They believed. They confessed, Peter confessed that Jesus was the Son of God. Now, you can look at the one guy, his name is Lee, and the pastor over here, his name is Gary. We don't really want to have a discussion with Lee by himself because you can tell he doesn't know. Gary's going to try to take over. That's exactly why we don't want to discuss with the guy in Carthage, Tennessee that's not Ron Ralph. Because Ron Ralph is the one who knows the doctrine. These other individuals basically are parroting. We've already demonstrated to ourselves that this gentleman in Carthage doesn't know what Ron Ralph has devoured several years ago regarding this dispensationalism that they're involved. And now watch their faces and listen to how this plays out.
What's he say? I'm talking to him a minute. He asked me.
Oh man, he almost ruined it. Gary said the apostles didn't believe till after the resurrection. He knows that Lee doesn't know what to say.
Yeah.
Lee's stammering around.
Question. Were they saved when they confessed that Jesus was the Son of God? The verse you just quoted, John 5, the ones you've quoted all down through the book of John, these are written that you might have eternal life. The things about Jesus, were the apostles saved?
I guess they were saved. I don't know. If they are saved, they had eternal life.
Okay. All right. Listen, so if they were saved, you said they have eternal life.
Yeah.
All right. Now, what happened after Jesus died and he rose? Did not the actual apostles not believe that Jesus was raised from the dead? Let me read it. Luke 25:4, verse 11. This is talking about the women, Mary, the mother of James, and the other Mary. And their words seemed as they were tales, and they believed them not. That's verse 11. And then, in verse 25, it says, Then he said to them, O fools and slow of heart to believe all the prophets have spoken. They didn't even believe that Jesus raised from the dead. Now, could they have continued on and be saved if they hadn't turned around?
But they did.
Oh, but they weren't.
They did, though, didn't they?
I asked, could they stay saved? Jesus had to actually do something else to convince his own apostles.
They believed after the resurrection. They did believe it.
So are you saying that they did believe in it?
They did believe it.
How
After
did
the
they?
resurrection,
How did
they
they?
did.
How did they?
Well, Peter preached on the day of Pentecost.
How did they believe after the resurrection?
They saw it.
Thank you.
They saw it.
So the finished work of Jesus on the cross did not affect these individuals until they saw him. The women believed the resurrected Jesus. His own apostles didn't confess him, and he's saying that they were not saved until after the resurrection, not just after the resurrection, but after they had seen him. Now this is different than what's said over in Carthage.
One thing I think, too, like when we say this is their big thing. Like when you said the finished work of Christ. He did everything for me, finished work of Christ. I don't have to do anything. But for these individuals, it wasn't finished.
Right.
And he hasn't even, Acts 1 hasn't sent the Holy Spirit to them. It says in the Bible that he's going to send it. He hadn't done that. And so with this, I'm saying these teachings, and this is the thing too, 4-hour study with you. Now, do you think Gary Hughes is banking on the fact that people aren't going to catch that stuff?
Yep. And he's hating that we're recording. He's tried every wiggle in the world to try to get us not to use the recording.
And he even says in the video, I don't want to give you ammunition for your TV show.
How could you? I mean, all he'd have to do is come on and straighten this out. He is the pastor. Let's listen a little bit more.
They did not believe until they saw him.
I agree.
Were they saved?
When they saw him, they were.
Were they saved before they saw him?
They didn't believe the gospel, no.
Wow.
They were called, weren't they?
Wow. You just said the apostles were not saved.
Were they?
Now, let's get how this goes at the end. Now, this is an audio, so you're going to have to bear with the fact that at some point, in 4 hours, you're going to lose a battery on something.
Yeah.
So we end up being involved with audio only, so take a listen.
Listen to me. John 3:16.
Ain't as a believer.
They say anything.
Okay, both of you contradicted yourself already.
Let me read on here. And then it says, he has not, the only reason anybody should stand is this right here. He that believeth not is condemned already. Why? Because he has not believed in the name of the only begotten Son of God. You know the only reason anybody keeps them out of heaven is because they will not believe on Jesus Christ. Because if you believe on him, he's condemned in your stead, and you'll never be condemned. And actually, what's
Now, you already have contradicted yourself. I did this to you, Lee, on purpose. I got this out before you ever got this started. I got this out. I got both of you on tape saying that the apostles had stopped believing that Jesus was going to raise. He upbraided them for their hardness of heart and their unbelief.
They stopped believing. We said they didn't believe in the resurrection. Is that a quibble? That wasn't a quibble.
Now, Lee started out saying that if a person believes, he was in John 5, he was John 3, both of these times he was actually trying to demonstrate that these people had eternal life. He had no idea where we were going to take that. I mean, these are their verses that they use all the time, right?
Right.
John 3:16, if you believe on him, you have eternal life. And they were basically saying that if you actually said that they didn't have eternal life back there when Jesus said they did, then you make God out a liar. Now they found out that that put them in a difficult situation, and they start backing off of it. So this, Caleb, this is...
And really, I'm saying with this discussion here about the apostles, they wouldn't have anybody at all being saved. And we were discussing about, we had during the tent meeting, somebody just flew up to the tent, dropped off a whole bunch of thin little booklets, Book of John. Nobody in the Book of John would be saved based on what these guys are saying, because even John the Baptist had to send his disciples while he was in prison and say, ask him, are you the Messiah, or are we waiting for another one? Well, just that simple. I'm saying, if they're going around and they say they don't believe it, he's in jail and he's wavering, what are the Baptists going to say about him? Well, he's the person who, when Jesus comes up, says, behold the Lamb of God, and now he's in jail and he's saying, I just don't know. Now, think about the situation they're in. And that's not at all where we are today, though.
No.
We can just open, examine, and just like it says about Paul, opening and alleging, and we can do this about once saved, always saved, about how to obey the gospel. And,
But the problem, Caleb, is we can't position them so that we can actually take a look at it. They're ever changing. I mean, we've looked at how many positions tonight? We've looked at Brian Edwards, who basically tries to say that he never even known a true born-again Baptist who was born again that ever fornicated. Mm-hmm. You've got Tim Weinhardt, and you have them saying that Tim Weinhardt fell. Now, how do you fall as a Christian? They don't even believe that you can fall. Then you have Gary Hughes actually admitting something that nobody would ever dream that he admitted, and that is that the apostles were never saved during the ministry of Jesus, but they said that the thief on the cross was saved.
Yeah.
He was saved before the blood was shed.
Right.
So here he is being saved before the blood was shed. The Tennessee guy, he says that the apostles were not saved until after the blood was shed. So either you still got them in the same, but that's even wrong as well, because I'm saying that Gary Hughes and them, they're saying that they weren't even saved after the blood was shed.
And
they
really,
had to see Jesus.
The Carthage, Tennessee argument is out of Hebrews 9, and it's
Let's
not.
go there.
It's not a bad argument, but it does in fact go both ways. Hebrews chapter 9 says that the blood is what brought in the New Testament, but the same passage, the same context says the blood went backwards to cover the people under the first covenant. So
well, how did the blood cover the thief on the cross? Jesus is actually alive. Mm-hmm. He's not saying, he can't be saying today, you'll be with me in paradise, if he's dead. So the blood isn't shed. They're going to say, well, he was bleeding from his back. I'm not saying, I don't know what these guys say, but I'm saying they're going to run around. And that's the problem we're having. We're not trying to belittle. We're not trying to make light. We're just saying, get your position. Independent Baptist basically means that you can hold a position that is different than another Baptist over here, and whether or not you're going to fellowship each other, I don't know. I know that the Carthage folk are on the record saying that Brian Edwards did a great job. Mm-hmm. He did a great job. Yeah. What did he do? In the debate with me, he actually said that the sinner's prayers found in Luke 18 at the temple, I reminded him that those were both Jews. You couldn't be in the temple if you weren't Jews, and so he took it back.
Right. And, I mean, even like with Ron Ralph, he says that he hates when Southern Baptist people get up and tell little kids, how many of y'all want to go to heaven, say this prayer. Now, is it the fact that they're little kids that he hates it, or is it the fact that it's the sinner's prayer that he hates it, and that's not in the Bible at all? And when we ask these questions, I don't know, just, we came into this saying not everybody was going to be pleased. You see this comment? He says, I never heard an apology. I'm very disappointed. And I'm saying with...
What is it when you say you made a mistake? Are we saying we're glad we made a mistake? This is a gentleman on Facebook. I mean, I don't even think you've ever heard anybody admit that they made a mistake in, like, broad, all over the world. Our stuff goes all over the world. This guy has 1,000 views on that one video. Mm-hmm. We have 1 million views on our YouTube. Somebody's going to say that, you know what, Caleb got right up there and said he was sorry. You think we're saying we made a mistake or a mistake was made and we're not sorry about it?
And I'll
mean,
just go ahead and
seriously.
say it. Yeah, I mean, I said a minute ago, too, about as soon as it happened.
We weren't apologizing to this guy.
I know that. I realize that. And then, too, we were talking about this also. I didn't get on Facebook a lot, and I had one, I would consider him a good friend, sent me a message from Texas. I didn't even respond to it because I knew we were going to come out and fix this. And so if there's anything negative people have said, I can basically say we're still friends.
Yeah. No
hard feelings with it. But with what we're saying here about what's going on, you got Brian Edwards saying one thing, and you're saying about with Ron Ralph, he says he did such a good job, and I'm asking, is it the sinner's prayer that he doesn't like? Is it the kids that he doesn't, the fact that they're young kids? This is the thing, too, that is so difficult about these things. Ron Ralph, now how many years, too? Ron Ralph, Brian Edwards, Gary Hughes, and I said this earlier, it's hard to keep up with all these personalities. And when most people probably wouldn't even be recording them anyway. But think about what this has done because individuals have heard what Baptist preachers are saying. And I recorded people when I was in school in Tennessee. People didn't like it. But you know what? I have a guy named Jeremy Roten say every Sunday I get up and preach to an audience of dead people. That's his church, and he's saying they're dead people.
Yeah.
So, again, no comfort.
We have scores of individuals that have written to us or called us, text us, email, everything saying, you know what, I had fallen away from the church. And these videos reinvigorated us and helped us to believe in the foundational things that we'd begun to doubt. The way y'all have actually shown that these people cannot answer. You know what, folks? If you're not liking the way it's done, I don't know what else to say, but I'm saying we did it bigger than the mistake. We actually let him get 300 views more, shared his videos for him, and I mean, he's even on Facebook saying that we're a great chess player. You know what that means? He had no idea what we were doing. Never seen anybody who would actually promote the very people that are saying that we made a mistake. We actually promoted them above our own video numbers so that we could be sure that more people saw it when we apologized.
Yeah. And you even
said, you need to say apologized again. Don't. I was just being facetious. Okay, let's go. Let's go to Hebrews chapter 9, verse 15. Now, y'all don't miss this, because if you ever do study with the Baptists or an individual who has one of the Calvinistic tenets, these folks are involved in Calvinism. They claim that they're not, but what we say, they're two-steppers, three-steppers. They've got these positions that came from that era, and John Calvin was the champion of all these. Nobody was teaching this, unless you're going to say you're Augustinian. And then you can't even get back to there. Look at what it says in Hebrews chapter 9, verse 15. For this cause, he is the mediator of the New Testament, that by means of death, for the redemption of the transgressions that were under the first testament, they which are called might receive the promise of eternal inheritance. For where a testament is, there must also of necessity be the death of the testator. Now notice this. The death of the testator has taken place with the Ridgeway Baptists, and yet they're still not saved. Now in Carthage, they're saying that upon the death of the testator, they would be saved. But it's pretty amazing to me, isn't it to you, Caleb, that they would even say that they were not saved?
Absolutely. That's the amazing part. Now, do you remember the last time we actually used this Gary Hughes stuff? And I'm saying you and I came on together for Gary Hughes material, and even I'm saying you were talking to me, trying to pitch it, and I got confused. I'm saying this is
because it goes so many ways.
Right, and it's happening all over again to keep up with, is it at the cross, the finished work of the cross? Is it at the resurrection? Is it after you have seen the resurrection, or is it all the way up to Acts 2?
With them, it's all of those, right?
And really, it should be when you talk to them on the street, when you talk to them in their building, it should be none of those things. It should be John 3:16. Always John 3:16.
Now, is this why you want the pastor?
Oh, for sure.
I mean, the guys don't know what they're teaching.
No. I was door knocking the other day, and a lady was saying to her husband, I had already asked, where's the Baptist church? And as I'm walking down the other way away from her, she's saying, John the Baptist was a Baptist. Why are they saying the Baptist church isn't in there? It is so broad. And I got a book the other day, I'm going to use it on TV pretty soon, of a man in the early 1900s. He was one of the individuals who was Baptist seminary. Said you cannot trace the Baptist church back to the New Testament.
Right.
Ron Ralph says you can. Now, why is it that no two Baptists get on the same page, even when they're independent?
And we're basically showing this so that people over in Tennessee can actually have like grounding. I mean, it's hard to get this stuff. It's hard. Number one, they hid the video.
Yeah.
Right? Took
absolutely.
the video down, and they've changed their story as to why they took the video down. 1 minute it's because I'm lying about them. Next minute it's because they didn't even intend for the video to be up there in the first place.
Yeah.
And then they said, well, they took it down because they thought I'd be too stupid and lazy to find it. Well, we had it all along. Not only did we have it, but we also went through a crash of a computer and still have it. I wonder whose side God's on here.
And Michael Eddy is saying he can't get it.
Yeah. All right. So we put it up. Did we put it up today?
I put up several things. I can't remember
Okay,
if the
let's
whole
listen.
thing got put up
Let's
or not.
listen to what they say in Carthage. Now, in Ridgeway, you're not saved even after the blood is shed. The apostles are still not saved because they are in a position of unbelief about the resurrected Lord. The ladies, Jesus should have chosen the ladies to be the apostles. They're actually, well, he'll say, well, they saw Jesus and the apostles didn't. Well, we haven't seen Jesus.
Right.
So, I mean, where does that put us? All of these individuals. All right, take a listen to Carthage, Tennessee.
I mean, quit believing and stop believing.
Now let me set this up for you right quick. The denomination called the Church of Christ teach certain doctrine that the Robertsons are pushing, and they don't understand what it means to be born again. They don't even understand salvation throughout the Bible, so you will constantly find them asking questions or taking positions that are contrary to sound doctrine, and then they attack everyone based on a false premise.
Now, tonight, have we been able to find sound doctrine? And we can go ahead and put our phone lines up and let individuals participate, lest they say that, well, we had a broadcast where we didn't let them participate. And I don't always, Caleb. I mean, I get so involved in putting the information that I don't always let the phone lines open up. And so what we are seeing is a guy who claims that all of these folk have sound doctrine. He's been listening to this stuff over here, has he not? He's been listening to Martinsville. He's been listening to Brian Edwards. He's been listening to lots and lots of our videos, and he says we don't even agree with one another. Well, what about y'all? Do y'all agree with one another? I mean, that's a very amazing charge coming from individuals that, you know, we're seeing they don't, any of them, and listen to him contradict the other Baptists.
That they start from. So after trying to ask a trick question to two members of the Lord's church, I called in and talked with Micah about the fact that a born-again child of God cannot lose their salvation. He tried to use John 18 against me, where Peter denied the Lord. The problem here, as I pointed out to Micah, is that Peter was not born again at this point, and neither were any of the other apostles. So to try and compare John 18, in which no one was born again, to a Christian in the church age is like comparing apples with rocks.
Now, in a minute, we're going to look at the thief on the cross, who Jesus said, if he's not born again, he goes into heaven. I mean, he goes into paradise. Now, okay, let's just say he doesn't use the thief on the cross. I mean, these people might not even use the thief on the cross. A.C. Smith didn't.
Right.
A.C. Smith didn't want sinner's prayer. I think all of them, you know, I just hold reserve. I mean, you can't tell what these folk actually approve.
I was going to say Luke 17:5. Now, in the context of Luke 17:5, and you can also use Matthew 17 also. I would rather use Matthew 17 first.
Okay.
Where Matthew 17:10, I think, they cannot cast out a demon. And so what does Jesus attribute it to? He says, because of your weak faith, you can't cast out the demon. Now, and that's not the right passage, but you go over to Luke 17:5.
It's actually...
here's
a lunatic. He's sore vexed. I brought him to your disciples. They could not cure him. And Jesus answered, faithless and perverse generation. How long will I be with you? Did he not expect them to believe?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But then Luke 17:5, you do again have Peter saying, Lord, increase our faith. If he's not a born again person, how in the world is he even beginning to say, you have faith? Because remember now, whether it's John 6 or what was the other passage, John 12 that Ron Ralph likes to use, you can't come to the Father or you can't come to Christ except the Father draw you. How is they have this faith? Well, according to them, God must have already drawn them. So it's the inconsistencies all over the place.
Well, and what would they say? I'm not sure exactly what they say because I don't know what they say. But when Jesus asked Peter who he was, Peter's confession elicits a statement out of Jesus that should demonstrate something. It should create a question. Jesus answered and said unto him, blessed art thou, Simon Bar-Jonah, for flesh and blood have not revealed it unto thee, but my Father which is in heaven. Now you take that back with John 1:12, and what do you have? You have their very statement, I don't know what they say, in Carthage. But as many as received him, to him gave him power to become sons of God, even to them that believe on his name, watch this, which were born not of blood, nor of the will of flesh, nor of the will of man, but of God. Now, he just said that Peter did not get this from flesh and blood, but God. Now, most of them say that they were saved. Now, this individual, you ready to hear how come they're not saved?
Micah is so bent on being right that he completely ignores Hebrews 9:14 through 17, which says that the New Testament was a force after Christ died. Hebrews 9:17 says, "For a testament is a force after men are dead, otherwise it is of no strength at all while the testator liveth. But here shortly he will take up that trumpet and use Hebrews 9:14."
This is not why Micah was saying what he said. He was saying it because that's what they say. Individuals basically have until we come along, they have all these people saved.
Right.
And they have the thief on the cross saved. I mean, how did we get into it with Gary Hughes in the first place? We were discussing about the thief on the cross.
Right.
And he said the thief on the cross was smarter, knew more about the kingdom than the apostles
Who had
did.
3 years of teaching.
3 years of teaching. So it's just really ludicrous for someone to say that it's us when you all can't get your story together. And can we get anything from Ron Ralph? No, we cannot. Can we get anything from this guy? No. Let's look at the double talk that we do get.
And you see, the church uploaded the sermon in an online Baptist website for anyone and everyone to listen to and to download. The only reason they took the video offline from their YouTube page was because of Johnny taking things out of context and lying during his first video, and they figured he wouldn't go smart enough and that he'd be too lazy to go find it on the web. And they figured he wouldn't go smart enough and that he'd be too lazy to go find it on the web. And they figured he wouldn't go smart enough and that he'd be too lazy to go find it on the web.
Well, that ain't true either. Okay, I'm a liar. You're saying tonight that the guy who is uploading my video is not uploading.
You wanted it done. My pastor did not. That was videoed and uploaded without his permission. I know that for a fact. You wanted it done. My pastor did not. That was videoed and uploaded without his permission. I know that for a fact. You wanted it done. My pastor did not. That was videoed and uploaded without his permission. I know that for a fact. I'm here correcting his lies.
Now, folks, you have to decide which one of us is actually lying. I mean, that is a clear contradiction. Now, did they take that out of context? How do you get two different stories? Now, we've admitted that a mistake was made in regard to all this, and even though, it's being said that we're dumb and lazy, when the computer crashed and we lost the video, we were in a setting where we were going to be driving 6 hours in one evening back home at 2, 3 in the morning. And, that little hat about being dumb I can wear, but lazy? Seriously? I mean, the different things, he doesn't even have the video. So, and if he does, we're wondering why in the world didn't he upload it a long time ago? So let's get off of that particular thing.
And can we make this point too?
Yeah.
Just because the mistake was made about the W-2 and that statement, they had that video taken down before W-2 was even mentioned.
Right.
Why? Because he
accused me.
Well, he says, Ron Ralph, there's no context to this stuff where he gets up and says, I hate the Southern Baptist Convention. And he said, why, Ron? Because they're only sending 6 pennies on the dollar to the missionaries. So what is that? But, would you call that embezzling? You sure call it greed? And he says he hates that. And he went off on all kind of things. So, we've got to make this as a statement too, y'all. Just because that one instance does not throw everything by the wayside, it does not remove the fact that they hid their own video, even if the W-2 part isn't a part of it. There's so much in there. And the thing too, y'all, you already said, you shared his video, you're trying to get him as many views as you can. That video wasn't getting any views until we started exposing a lot of it.
Ron Ralph's video only had 300 and something views, and it's a year old. Your video was only 2 weeks old and it had 700 views. If anything, we're actually helping them get views. Do I have a problem with that? No, not while we're showing their error. I don't. That's the whole point of this, is exposing them and getting people to see it. here on What's the Bible Say.
Why not give the whole truth? Why all the misinformation?
Why do we want to talk to somebody who doesn't represent their church? If Ron Ralph wants to make a statement, we'll be glad to have Ron Ralph make a statement. But, you know, guys who actually say about themselves, you know, in other words, who is this gentleman? Let's just ask that question, Caleb. Who is this guy that is actually calling in? Does anybody actually know if he has any authority? Is he a representative? Is he a board member? Do they have boards? I mean, we have conflicting information about that as well. And why is it that Ron Ralph is letting him end up being? Listen to a statement that he prepared.
Robertson won't debate me. Johnny Robertson won't debate me. Johnny Robertson won't debate me. Number two, Caleb is scared to talk to me. The man that claims to not be worried about your Baptist preacher is scared to death of this one Baptist preacher right here. I have challenged all three Robertsons to a debate at the same time, and they back down. They pretend like they want to debate my pastor because he's a pastor and say they don't deal with church members. I'm a preacher. I'm a preacher. I'm a preacher. I go into...
Where's your church? Where's your church? Where's your church? This dude is not anything over there. I don't see his... I see him in a video, you know, that the pastor put up talking about Cornerstone Baptist, and he gets to appear in it. I don't see any creds. I don't see anybody saying he's an official spokesman. I'm actually in touch with individuals that are around that area. I don't think he has anything but his own self-proclamation. I'm a preacher.
Yeah, and even with, you know, you could go back on the YouTube and find where we had the $1 million challenge with the W2. Well, there's a second challenge on there where he offered up $10,000. He said if we could show where water baptism was even attached to Paul's idea of salvation. Not a thing wrong with that challenge.
Yeah.
I'm saying you could go on there and see his comment and see how we answered that. And really, when we're saying, I mean, with what he's saying here, you already said, he doesn't even know the books that his pastor's reading to get this type of information. Why would you start out with basically the student instead of just say, look, if we're going to do this, why have two debates when you could go ahead and just have one? Because that's the
exactly
thing.
right.
If you debate this man, what's going to happen? Either Ron's going to say, y'all need to be quiet, or Ron's going to come out and debate, and that just means more work.
So I ask him, I say, just to demonstrate that he's not the man we want to be involved with, I say, who is Charles Larkin? He said, no idea who Charles Larkin is. I said, nothing unique. He said, nothing unique about y'all. Let's see what he says here. What did you hear from him? Nothing. Now, I say back to him, look, you're a sheep. Pastor Ron left you out of the loop. If you don't know who Charles Larkin is, you've been left out of the loop. See, that's what actually takes place. The pastors know things. And just like, for instance, we got a Facebook message from him saying that the video about not voting that we played, where Ron Ralph said in a video about God likes him, that he saw over numbers where they didn't let them go to war unless they were 20, and he said, we don't let them vote unless they're 20. He said, that's having to do with voting at the church. Well, Ron Ralph has already said that they don't vote at the church. You know, he doesn't let people, the sheep, vote. I mean, see, you can't get it. And so that's why, have we talked to this guy?
Yeah.
We have talked to this guy. We've let him call in. We've let him do all kinds of stuff. Where does he get the idea that we're scared of him? We're basically saying he doesn't know what's going on.
And he was supposed to have a debate already in Carthage, Tennessee, and he basically made that so unbearable and backed out so many times for so many different reasons. It's always the dishonesty of the other person. I don't doubt at all that you've debated some dishonest people, but did that stop you?
No.
If you're going to have the truth, you're going to have the truth.
I had a guy who actually had me sign a contract, what we'd do, and then he broke the contract right on the air. I had to buy airtime right behind him because I knew he was going to do that, or he was susceptible. He had been dishonest in the past. And so that's the kind of thing that we deal with, and we don't mind. This is the what you have to deal with in order to get the truth out. So, folks, all we're saying is please don't look at things from a perspective of not having viewed all the stuff that we do. We have covered so many different ways that the Baptists slice and dice. and we're trying to get it into your home. Why? This isn't the Johnny and Caleb hour for the entire world. We're trying to put this stuff out there so y'all can go out and talk to Baptists. And don't talk to us about apologizing. Get out there and get in there and mix it up with the Baptists. I guarantee if you do, you'll have to straighten yourself out several times.
And that's the thing too. A lot of, I got to give it, I'm saying, to Travis Thomas. Because, he will say, and this is some of the stuff that I talked to him about, when you get started, now, you said earlier, two-stepper, three-stepper.
Yeah.
I can remember being, 16, something like that, and I went with Micah, and this guy was saying to Micah, he said, you're talking about 5-point. He said, I'm not 5-point, and I just, every bit of it going over my head. Well, that's just going to happen. And you got to go out, get your licks, go home, study, and we will never develop ourselves, and that's one of the things we were talking too about, this idea of dispensationalism. If you don't get out and meet with these different people, and they may only give you a little bit of time, but you're never going to develop these ideas because you're never going to hear them from them.
Look at Travis promoting tent meetings with a gentleman out of Memphis, Tennessee, John Shannon. First time I ever worked with John Shannon. Second time I ever worked with him in a tent campaign in Texas. He actually taught and baptized a Baptist pastor and his head deacon. That's the kind of things that are going on. And we're just saying what you need to do is be tutored and realize that these guys are crafty and they are changing things around, and it's difficult to get it all together. We're trying to help you on What Does the Bible Say? Hundreds of videos and hundreds of views. These folk are watching this stuff. We have baptized Baptist preachers, more than one. And individuals in the Baptist church, it's just, it's amazing when they see their pastors wiggling around and changing their doctrine. We're out of time.
Not even wiggling around, not even making a statement at all. Why don't you
Hiding,
get out there and answer these guys?
We have to press them, and even that ends up getting people riled up and angry with us because we take in recording devices so that we could show. I mean, what if we didn't have recordings of all this? They took their video down. And what if we weren't able to handle all that kind of stuff? So, folks, tonight, we're thrilled with the individuals who do support us, and we're thrilled with the individuals who watch us, and we don't mind you being critical because that keeps us honest. Checks and balances is all good as long as we stay on the same page, and we're always asking for, what does the Bible say? And we'll try to give you these videos to help you go out and change your community. Any last words?
I'd say just go ahead and start making the effort to change the community. And y'all, I'm saying this. Last words, we do have a couple minutes. This right now, I would say, is deterrent for someone to even begin to try.
Oh, yeah.
Man, like I said, I didn't look at half of what people were saying, but if there's no telling what there is, and I'm saying that would really get somebody from, people say the ball of yarn is so big I don't even know where to begin. Just start with picking up a string. You're probably not going to get too many people to help you on the get-go, so you're going to have to do it by yourself. And
pray for Travis Thomas. When he asked me my advice about him, I said, don't quit your day job.
Because they'll try to own you.
That's right. People try to own you. They'll try to make you look bad. And so we're getting great encouragement from this young guy. And I know the heat's been put on in that area. Always ask for it. What does the Bible say? God bless you.